First of all, good morning and welcome back to this class. Let me first of all connect with the projector. Okay, here you can see that. Congratulations on many of you who have worked very hard to submit your work during the weekend. And I know it's going to be a lot of hard work after the Chinese New Year's holiday. Thank you very much. Today it's day number 15 in week number 8, and today's day is March the 9th, okay? And it's a special meaning because it marks the beginning of the third learning contract. The third learning contract has a theme called problem-based learning. And problem-based learning means you're going to study something together as a team. And each one of you has a role to play in this team, okay? At the first phase of the problem-based learning from the second learning contract, I have invited you as a team to see if you would like to contribute a digital story, okay, at the end of the second learning contract, which is optional, which is not compulsory. If you have already prepared a digital story, make sure you come to sign up on this week's classes, or if you're ready today, I can give you time, if not on Thursday. Okay, and say that you're a particular team, you want to deliver a bonus digital story in class, you will be given 10 minutes as a team, okay? So since we just have 3 teams all together, if you take a look at the teaming informations, I think we are affordable to provide 3 teams all together to have 3 digital stories, if you want to do it, okay? Now by doing the digital story in class as a team, you can earn 2 specific scores. One is the in-class participation score, as we have announced before. The second is the bonus teamwork score, which is a very good cushion score to ensure any drop in your score in individual items of your second learning contract, or even in the first learning contract. That's the way to encourage you to learn. All right. So I've already given you this announcement. It's really up to you. You want to share your digital story with the whole class for this week. Okay, you have 2 chances. One is today, the other is on Thursday. All right, but the in-class participations keeps going until the end of the semester, which is the end of April. So this is week number 8. I have given you a teacher's message earlier today, and the teacher's message mainly give you a sense of what is meant by problem-based learning. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 specific particular learning objective. The first is help you to think critically and be able to analyze and solve complex real-world problems. And what kind of problem? It really depends on you, because now you have a lot of proposals on the table with the teams of members there. Remember, in the first learning contract, each one of you has already contributed and submitted 1 individual proposal. So in your team of 4 persons, or some of your team is 3 persons, you have at least 3 individual proposals, okay? And from the second learning contract, you have 2 pairs in your team, and each pair in your team has to submit a pair proposal. So you have 2 more proposals beside the 4 individual proposals. That is the 2 pair proposals. So altogether, in each team, if your team has just 2 pairs, you will have 4 individual proposals. It means 4 individual problems and 2 pair proposals, 2 problems, okay? 2 pair problems, so 6 altogether. But for this special class, we have 1 team which is 3 pairs, so you can see that 6 individual problems and 3 pair proposals, plus 9 problems to choose from. Well, if you do not like all the proposals you have at this point, you can still come up with a new one, okay, as long as all the members of your team agree to that. So think practically is definitely something you need to go through in order to select 1 proposal. And what kind of problem are you going to solve? Well, very frankly, you cannot be too ambitious, because You're not in a very technical class. That means you're not expected to come up with a magic computer which is going to fathom all the viruses. No, it's not something like this. What we would like you to study is a problem that is related to what we have been exploring over the first and second learning contract, including the third learning contract. For example, today we're going to look into 2 more stories on information fraud. Okay, so the problem you solve, or suppose you're going to propose a problem in your third learning contract, that is to look into some real-life examples of information fraud. Well, then you can study what the story is, where did it happen, and why it happened, what harm has it done, and how can we prevent it? Something like this could be the problem. And mainly, these kind of problems is meant to achieve the third learning objective of this course, raise your awareness of the impact of information security or privacy in our daily living in today's internet world. So the second objective is to find, evaluate, and use appropriate learning resources which make the best use of their information literacy and information competency learning in the second learning contract. Third, work cooperatively in teams and small groups. Definitely you have a team which contains 2 pairs. So small group means the pairs and the team means all the people together. Cooperatively means each one of you should be aware of what you need to contribute to the team, to the pair, okay? And accordingly, complete your portions of the work. Cooperatively means do not create trouble for your team members. If they all rely on you to produce your journals with OIA, but you don't, they will be stuck, okay? Demonstrate versatile and effective communication skills, both verbal and spoken. Definitely, you need to communicate with one another, written, through the discussion forum, verbal, through your phone conversations, or in-class discussions, and you must communicate clearly what each one of us, or each pair of us in this team are supposed to do in order to get this contract done. You have 3 weeks time at most, with 1 more week, 4 weeks in the second learning contract. Okay, now lastly, you must use some content knowledge. For example, if we explore social responsibility, you need to know something about video, right? St. Gallen's professor gave you a very good video about that. And if you want to do something on the digital divide, you might want to study the situations of particular countries, like Australia, which is given very clearly in the context, or information fraud to network security, or Wi-Fi insecurity. So you need to make the best use of the content knowledge you pick up from the course, from the video, or from the learn and practice PowerPoints, which is based on the suggested text. And you must use the read to lecture skills. That means how much should I do and how much time should I devote into getting something done just good enough to produce my contributions. So you need to think a little bit more about this. So you need to reflect, okay, on what you can do to accomplish that. You cannot do anything more than what the time allows because you're several courses together. So you just have to rely on one another as a team, okay? So that is the purpose of this particular learning contract on the problem-based learning. So you need to come up with a problem, which is not so difficult, remember, but as long as it contains all the ingredients that can help you to produce what is expected in the context of the journal, in the context of discussion forum details, in the context of the report, in the context of the final blog, okay, that it's very important, and also some housekeeping stuff now in the meeting minutes, all right? So choosing your problem is exactly what you need to study because now you have several proposals on your table, including creating a new one. So these are just some suggestions on how you can go through it. That's a democratic process of problem selection. And then you need to understand that from this class onward until the end of the third learning contract, we would like to adopt a slightly different class format, which is I will speak for the first 10 minutes to introduce to something, and then the second 10 minutes I will give each team on your own to work on yourself here as a group, and for the first 30 minutes I will invite each team to come up here to give us an update on what you have been doing in each class, remember, in each class. So you need to get yourself used to working in class, all right? And the fourth 20 minutes, I would say, can you help us to engage your whole class to know something more about your problem? Okay, in the last 5 minutes, I'm going to give some feedback. So you will have 10 minutes working on your own, a brief discussions, a briefing is just like a press to inform the whole class, and then the second round is a longer period of time to help the whole class understand what you have been doing, okay? Which could be public, everybody can hear you, or you still can work on your own, but you need to keep records of the discussions, okay? So that it's a flexible 20 minutes, but remember it's going to be shared by the 3 teams, so it's about 6 to 7 minutes per team. If you do not want to use it publicly, that means in front of the whole class, again, you can work it on your own, all right? So my job is to walk around, to listen to all the teams, to make sure that you're on track. But in order to help you to do that in the next 3 weeks, your team must have some kind of structure. So it is recommended that you have to come up with some persons to fill up the team role called team coordinator, a leader. The secretary, the scribe, the liaison is going to keep everybody in touch, or even to keep the other groups in touch. The tracker, that means the person is going to look up to you. What have you done and what have you not done, so that we know what to do. And you must have a timekeeper to see how much time should we devote to things like this. Now, you have to get used to the cycles of working together with a role and with contributions, and you must make the best use of the Moodle environment to leave records of your work. Well, remember, last time we have showed you how to work with the wiki, all right? So the wiki is very important, the discussion forum is also very important to keep one another in touch. So the purpose of the problem-based learning is to combine the good things from inquiry-based learning, which is the OIA-based process, with the self-regulated learning, which is a very much a timeline, goal-oriented, reflections, evaluations into doing the problem-based learning. So you must tell one another, including me, what you want to accomplish towards the end of the study. Okay, the 3 weeks. But eventually, remember, you need to produce the same set of artifacts. You must include individually a journal, okay, pair-wise, team-wise discussion details. The whole team must contain a final report on your topic. And individually again, you must produce for your own sake a blog to record your learning. All right? So the artifacts, the set of artifacts is consistent across the free learning contract. But in this learning contract, the focus is on teamwork, individual work, peer work, identifying other team goals, your contributions to the team goals, or the peer's contribution to the team goals, and you must take up roles, okay? Like a secretary, like a tracker, like a liaison member, like a coordinator. So all of these, it's a little bit more challenge, but most of the time you need to work in class, okay? So you don't have all the time to enjoy listening, except for today. I still have some stories for you, okay? So having said that, I've given you some tips on discussions, leading discussions, or working in pairs, and this is the information I got from the teaming informations. The team 1 is pair 01 and pair 02. Team 2 is pair 04 and pair 06. Team 3 contains 3 pairs, 3, 5, and 7. And I just got a news that Lindsay, your partner, dropped the class. So, but you have a team, okay? You have a team. In view of the fact that you see team number 3 contains 3 pairs, okay? So it's also possible that we could combine team 1 and team 2, but it's really up to you, okay? We'll find a bit two task force or something like that. So, but I'll let you consider that on your own, and I will be open to all of your suggestions, all right? So this is the message for this week. Now, in order to complete the discussions that we start out last week, particularly last Thursday, We will come back today with a much more deeper look into the Nigerian scam, which is a very famous one. You need to get informed. And the second one is something very much happened in Europe that is called the street lottery scam. But one more thing that is much more interesting is called From Russia with Love. This is a very interesting dating games, okay? So we will explore them today, and then we start up with the Nigerian scam, because last week we explored a story which is a three-part series on the online job applications, and which involves a lot of the Nigerian scam. Okay, so today we want you to be informed of this. So let's get started again. 20 minutes.
My name is Peter Hathaway, and I live in Seattle, Washington. I'm an international broker, and according to my colleagues, I'm a pretty good one. Basically, I act as a middleman for companies all over the world. I get them whatever goods or products they might need at the best possible price. On May 18th, 2006, I received an email with a business proposal. It was from a gentleman in Nigeria who was looking for 52 tons of structural steel. His name is Solomon Obiku, and he is the CEO of an oil company owned by the Nigerian government. He said that they needed the steel to build a refining facility just outside of the capital of Nigeria, Lagos. I just needed to find him a deal and give him a quote. So over the next few days, we communicated through email and over the phone, just about current offers that were on the market. He seemed like a really nice guy. He had a good sense of humor, and he was very professional. After about a week or so, I found a deal that I thought would be very good for him. So I added my commission and gave him a quote, and that was that. The next day, Solomon got back to me. He said that he had found a deal that was better than mine, just by a little bit, he said. And he also said that when it comes down to business, we have to focus on the bottom line. He said he was very sorry and that he would keep in touch with me for any future opportunities. And that was it. Days passed and I occasionally received emails from Solomon on anything and everything. The oil industry in Nigeria, the steel industry, sports, movies. He even sent me pictures of his family vacation in Thailand. Actually, he called me before the holidays to wish me Merry Christmas. And I thought to myself, wow, what a really nice guy. He must have felt bad about rejecting my offer earlier. But on January 18th, 2007, Solomon sent me an email which caught me off guard. He told me that he was considering running for the presidency of Nigeria.
I have met lots of good people that I could rely on. I know how the strings are being pulled. I came from a poor family.
It seemed very far-fetched. It seemed unbelievable to me at first, but
I think I have a shot.
what did I know about Nigerian politics?
What do you think?
We started having regular conversations on the phone again, but this time it was as if I was the advisor to the potential president of Nigeria. To be honest, it felt really good. Solomon also told me something else. He said that over the years on business trips, he had generated some commissions off of the oil company and put them into personal accounts. He said there was a securities bank in Amsterdam that was holding his money, and that the total amount was $2.4 million. He admitted that this money was put into a personal account, but he felt he needed to do this so that he could fund his presidential campaign. He said that he needed to show strong foreign support, and that way, the citizens of Nigeria for the first time would believe in true democracy. He said that his only problem was that he couldn't get out of the country except on business trips, which were happening very seldomly. And he was positive that he wouldn't be able to get to Amsterdam before the elections. So he offered me a business proposal. He said that he would give me a ticket to Amsterdam and a letter authorizing me to conduct banking on his behalf. And he said that he would give me 30% of the total funds for doing this. $720,000. All I needed to do was go to Amsterdam, pick up the money, put it into a joint bank account in both his and my name, and that was it. He could easily fund his presidential campaign. I thought to myself, this is too easy. How could I just get $720,000 just like that? And how could he trust me? How did he know when I had the money I wouldn't just ditch him? I laughed about the whole thing. I was thinking it was a joke. But then I thought to myself, even if it is a joke, who cares? What do I have to lose? It's a free trip to Amsterdam. But being that this was a serious matter, I figured I should do some research of my own. So I looked up Solomon's oil company on the internet, and sure enough I found a website with Solomon's name on it. I just wanted to make sure he wasn't a crook or anything like that. And I also looked up the security bank in Amsterdam, First Securities Limited. They had a very professional and very legit looking website. So after a little bit of thought, I decided I would do it. My wife was very skeptical about it, but at this point, all I was doing was going to Amsterdam for free. A free vacation never hurt anybody, right? So Solomon sent me and the security company a signed letter empowering me to withdraw money on his behalf on March the 2nd. He also gave me the contact name of the agent who would help me with the transaction and setting up the bank account and anything else that I might need while in Amsterdam. His name was David van der Sar, a 35-year-old employee of First Securities Limited. Solomon suggested that we give David $15,000 for his help, so I agreed. As the days passed by before leaving for Amsterdam, I was getting antsy. I still couldn't believe that I was going to get $720,000 that easy. And if I did, what would happen? Who would I be with? Who would be watching me? What kind of security did they have there? Was my life at risk? So I called David in Amsterdam. He seemed like a really nice guy. He reassured me that all I needed to do was come to Amsterdam with a signed release, and I could have the money. The whole time I was still thinking, what had I done to be so lucky? But I guess I just thought if I could see the cash in front of me, I might be a little bit more reassured.
We should get this news out as soon as possible.
Solomon called me almost every day, making sure that the project was going as planned. And just as he promised, I received the tickets to Amsterdam. So the big day came and I finally left the US. And when I arrived, just as we had planned, David picked me up at the airport, took me to the hotel, and picked me up from the hotel the next morning. We arrived at First Securities Limited, and the manager wanted to meet me personally so that he could see the signed release. I showed it to him, and he said, "Sir, you may have your funds." And then they brought 2 briefcases into the room. They put them on a table and they opened them. It was there. The $2.4 million was there, right in front of me. I started to feel nervous. My legs were shaking and I could feel my voice getting higher, so I was trying not to say anything. $2.4 million cash sitting in front of me with the owner thousands of miles away. I felt insecure. Even the bank manager became anxious. But then something happened.
Sir, I'm afraid we have a problem. There's a lot of cash here, and I didn't know that.
What's the, I don't, what's
Well,
this?
Do you have your insurance papers with you?
Because in our registration documents, it states that the value of the contents of the box is $2.4 million. It does not state that the contents of the boxes actually is $2.4 million. In that case, we need your insurance documents to verify the source of the money and how it got into the country. It's in our best interest to serve you, and if you supply the documents, we need those to release them to you. Otherwise, we're legally liable. The Dutch government could claim that this is cash used to support terrorist activities, and I just don't want to get in the middle of all that. So provide us with the documents, and by all means, it's yours.
But I was told.
Why did we accept the deposit in the first place?
Well, as you know, I wasn't the bank manager at the time of the deposit, so I don't know. Anyway, the rules have been changed over the last year, and I want to make sure I do everything legally right. So if you don't mind.
Sir, I think the rules should apply to the time of the deposit as stipulated in the contract back then. It doesn't make sense to do this to our client. I mean, the money is here, it's ready to go. What's the big deal? He just takes his money and leaves. It's that simple.
Look, David, I don't think you're in the position to negotiate
Roland.
a deal. Do the job that you're assigned to do. I'm in charge of this, and I would appreciate a little bit of cooperation.
But it's not fair.
Well, I'll tell you what's not fair. If you show any more insubordination.
David jumped out of his seat, feeling that he would also lose his share, and they got into a big argument right in front of me. David was threatened with losing his job, so he finally calmed down. And I asked the manager if I did give him the right papers, if I would be allowed to have the funds, and he reassured me that by all means, if I came back with the right documentation, the money would be mine. I even swapped one of the $100 bills out of the case with my own to take back with me to the US. I wanted to make sure that the money was real. Sure enough, it was legit. And that was it. From that point forth, the money was on my mind every minute of every day. I called Solomon, and he was very upset that First Securities Limited wouldn't release his money. But he called me back in a few days, and he said that the Central Bank of Nigeria would release the official papers. But because it was risky, we would have to bribe the bank manager. We would have to give him $30,000. Half of that bribe would have to come from my pocket, but Solomon assured me that I would get it back on top of my original amount of $720,000. So I sent Solomon $15,000 to get the ball rolling. The troubles didn't stop there.
I have good news, but also bad news. Actually, more bad.
Why was the problem?
I got the papers that we need.
Okay, so...
I found out that in order to release
This kind of documents, anybody in Lagos has to have the signature of the minister.
they have the
Biggest fish, and this whole
Okay, so now what?
minister wants, a share from this.
What share? How much?
He asked me for 5%,
5%, Solomon.
$50,000.
Because I don't have that kind of money.
I know it's a lot of money for us,
Wait,
but I can't
See any other way?
is he... I mean, okay, let me understand this. Is he the only guy that we can do this through?
He controls all the money which comes in and
out of the country.
I don't know what to do.
I know it's a lot of money for us, but we have to do something.
No, it's just that's a lot of money. That's, this is coming out of nowhere.
have any suggestions?
I don't know. Get a hold of me later and let me know what you think. How are we gonna get around this? Alright.
We keep in touch.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
I didn't have that money, and neither did Solomon. So he suggested we borrow it from friends or family. I wasn't sure. I just didn't know what to do anymore. So I called the bank manager of First Securities Limited again, and I asked him that if I had the right papers, if I would be able to have my money. And he reassured me that by all means, if I presented the right documentation, the money would be mine.
Thanks.
So what should we do?
I don't think it's a good idea.
You know, I want to send him the money because I know what it can bring back to us. It's $700,000. That's a lot of money.
But you don't know that for sure. What if we lose the money? It's a lot of money to lose.
I sat there in the room and I saw the money in front of me. It was sitting there. I touched it, cash. I brought the money back with me. It's real.
But you don't know the guy.
I know him. I've talked to him. I've emailed him. I've communicated with him enough to know that he's on the level. He's trying to
Listen
help
to
us.
yourself.
You know what? You need to listen to me too. He's trying to help us.
Think about your family. What if we should save some money?
You know what? I am thinking about our family. I am thinking about saving money. Why do you think I'm trying to? You know what I mean? I sent him a little bit. He needs a little bit more to get things done. You know, whatever it is, and we're gonna be very wealthy after all this.
What if it's a scam though?
It's
How
not.
do you know?
I know it's not a scam. You know what? I've talked to this guy enough. You don't know, okay? You don't
You don't
You've
know
got,
either.
no, you've got to trust me with this one. After arguing with my wife for a week, I borrowed $60,000 from two of my best friends. And I talked to Solomon and told him that I wanted to get that $60,000 back on top of my initial share, which was $720,000. Solomon told me to let it go since I was getting that money for minimal input. But I didn't want to negotiate. I couldn't believe that he was negotiating with me. But eventually he gave in and told me that he would give me all the money back. I finally sent him the money. And a few days later, he sent me the documentation signed by the Nigerian Minister of Finance. I was excited when I got it, and I quickly faxed a copy of that to the manager of First Securities Limited in Amsterdam. But the next morning, I received a voicemail from Amsterdam. It was the manager of First Security confirming to me that it was the right paper, but because he needed reassurance as to the authenticity of it, he needed one more thing, a signature of a Nigerian attorney that would confirm that the paper was authentic. The ball was in Solomon's court again. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to go forward, but I was too far in. Too far in with my own money and my friend's savings. I couldn't let them down. Solomon told me he found an attorney who could do it for $16,000. So my half of that would be $8,000. $8,000 was really nothing compared to the $75,000 I had already invested. I decided to go forward. I borrowed $8,000 from my parents' savings and sent it to Solomon. A month ago today. It's been the worst month of my life ever. I can't eat, I can't sleep, Solomon doesn't return any of my phone calls, and I never received anything in the mail from a Nigerian attorney. That's why yesterday, I bought a plane ticket to Lagos. I'm gonna get my money back, one way or another.
sometimes it's a news story. It contains all the good elements, but sometimes even though a professional might be trapped when you are already into it, okay? And that also explains the reasons why I do not know if you checked out the story. In January the 4th, 2012, in Macau, we heard from the Macau daily newspaper that a woman civil servant who is relatively highly educated was actually tricked based on the police story. More than 850,000 Macau attackers into several bank accounts of a person she trusts because she has been dealing with that person for more than 6 months. Okay, so now at the very beginning we introduced you to the term called social engineering, but I think it's more than social engineering, because social engineering, as you have heard from Calvin today, deal with the occasional capture of details based on people's innocence. All right, but in the context of this kind of scam, it's something that really attracts you into. But frankly speaking, I receive email like this often, many times during the year. We have a proposal for you. We are who and for which company. Whenever I see that, I delete them. Okay, and very true. Those proposals are written very professional, and it trying to entice you into believing they're really good people. But think a little bit further. All right. So yes, I agree with Anna. It's read at the very beginning. You believe it's very good things that you're doing, but when you track into it, when you step into step further, like this Peter, what is his result in the end? He went to Nigeria. He would like to get back his money, but he was killed 3 days after he landed into Nigeria. The Collins report. This is based on real events. All right. So I want to put you into the positions that now you put some thought into this, and you know that how it's being organized. It's some, and Nigeria is famous for this kind of scam because, according to the report, 1/3 of the revenues of the country was generated because the scams was generated there to put money from all over the world. So you see that you won't believe that. All right. So another story I would like you to pay some attention. That's obvious before that. Do you have any teams who would like to share with us the digital story today? Any teams? Or on Thursday? Okay, you just write a message here on the public online discussion forum. You have a digital story to share today or on Thursday. So the second story I would like to share with you is the very interesting one. Basically, it's much like a James Bond story, okay? But I want you to be aware that actually I have to choose between these two, okay? The first one is called Speed Lottery, okay? That is a very common thing. The other is Russia Roulette. Let me choose this one, okay? All right. Because of the time of the story, so I did not give you time to discuss it first, but I would like to
Women, people who never
make sure that you have it.
Last year, MI5 believed it had uncovered a Russian spy at the very heart of British democracy, inside the House of Commons.
If MI5 did not take this sort of thing seriously, we'd want our money back, and we'd be entitled to get our money back.
The 26-year-old Russian, Kafyeza Turivyachcha, was accused of being the eyes and ears of Russia's foreign intelligence service. Were you a honey trap spy?
No. I'm sorry to disappoint you.
In her only interview, she talks about being an innocent victim, targeted by MI5.
The spies, Russian spies, are very skillful.
I've never met any, I don't know.
And the MP who was her lover has hit back furiously at the security service.
She felt
like she was a hunted animal, and I can understand that.
The court has upheld Katya's case and she will not be deported. But the question that will now be asked is why was this case brought in the first place, and how, on the face of it, did MI5 get it so wrong? On Tuesday, Katya's long battle to avoid deportation and clear her name ended in victory. She'd taken her appeal to the Special Immigration Appeals Commission, SIAC. It deals with sensitive cases of national security, and some of the evidence is held in secret. This is the first espionage case the court has ruled on. And what did the verdict mean to you?
Everything. I would have been branded as a spy forever.
At the heart of the story is a tantalizing question. Was Katya an innocent abroad, or a long-term sleeper for Russian intelligence? Were her relationships genuine, or was she a honey-trap spy?
Is the honey trap purely a Hollywood fiction? No, gosh, no, it's not. Of course it's not. It's only fiction for governments and countries that play by some kind of sense of rules, whatever that may be. Honey trap is used extensively.
The fact is that a honey trap spy represents a very real and present threat. Gullibility must come into it by definition, because, what sensible 60-year-old man thinks a 22-year-old woman has found the love of her life in him? I'm not saying it never happens, but it's very, very unlikely.
The story begins in St. Petersburg, where Katya studied international relations. MI5's assessment is that she was recruited here by one of Russia's intelligence agencies when she was a student.
St. Petersburg is a well-known recruiting ground. There would have been people whom everybody knew was from the KGB, the FSB around. They would have watched her, they would have approached her, and they would have invited her in for a career chat. Vladimir Putin was recruited there. He let it be known that he wanted to work for the then KGB, and they duly recruited him there.
When you were a student at St. Petersburg University, were you ever approached by anybody from Russian intelligence?
No.
Never?
Never. We were absolutely unaware that there was actually Russian intelligence around us.
Every year, students from the university volunteered to help at an international conference. Katya acted as one of the chaperones. This was how she first met the Liberal Democrat MP, Mike Hancock.
I was working with the British delegation, which consisted of British MPs and lords.
What did Mike Hancock say to you when you chatted to him?
Lots of things.
Did he make advances to you?
Can we make a break?
I met her at a conference in St. Petersburg in 2006. She was bright, intelligent, spoke good English, friendly. That was it.
It was the beginning of a 4-year relationship between the married MP and the young Russian. But Hancock wasn't the first Westerner chaperoned by Katya who would fall for her charms. 2 years earlier, she met a Dutch diplomat at a St. Petersburg conference.
We had a couple of drinks, dinner at the reception, and exchanged our details, and then next day went for dinner, then theatre.
Did you sleep with him?
Yes.
Did you know what his job was?
He was a Dutch diplomat, that's everything I knew.
Did you ask him about his job?
No.
Spying, the second oldest profession in the world, still relies on human sources to deliver what nothing else can.
People look at technology in the spy business, and because it's sexy, they think it's the center of the universe. I don't care whether it's the 15th century or whether it's the 21st century. If you want to understand intent, you need a human being.
In 2006, Katya moved to the UK. Mike Hancock later gave her a job as his parliamentary researcher. She was vetted and given a parliamentary pass. Now, with a House of Commons pass, Katya was at the heart of Westminster and potentially close to some of its secrets. At Westminster, Mike Hancock was a busy MP with a seat on two important parliamentary bodies, the All-Party Russia Group and the Defence Select Committee. What kind of documents would Mike Hancock have had access to? Would they be confidential documents?
For the most part, it's not seeing some plan of a bomb-making installation or something like on a James Bond episode. It's nothing like that at all. It's what you're trying to do is gain information and knowing who's sleeping with whom, having access to a building where there are lots of other people's researchers, you can get to know them when most doors a lot of the time are not locked, would be immensely useful to another country's intelligence gathering operation.
Did you see any confidential documents in the course of your work?
Never.
Did Mike Hancock ever show you or give you any confidential documents?
No.
I never hid the fact that Katya was a Russian working for me. Why should I? She was very good at her job, and irrespective of her personal relationship, she was the best person for that job.
As well as being Mike Hancock's assistant, Katya was his live-in lover and shared his London flat. She'd been keeping a very personal diary, referring to Hancock as her darling teddy bear. She wrote, "There is no one more tender and sincere than you." Did you love him?
I think we have a judgment on that, and it clearly states that we had a genuine relationship, so I don't think I have to try to respond to that. It's been scrutinized well enough.
Mike Hancock's constituency is in Portsmouth, home to most of Britain's warships and headquarters of Britain's fleet. So the MP for Portsmouth South is in a position to know a lot. MI5, the security service, has an obvious interest in Russians working at the House of Commons. Checks are routine, as the potential for a Russian sleeper spy is always there. MI5 called Katya to set up a meeting.
A man called me, I picked up the phone, my office phone, and he said that he was from Ministry of Defence and he would like to meet me.
Did you meet him?
Yes.
And did he say he was from the Ministry of Defence?
No, not anymore. He now said that he was from MI5.
Her visitor wanted to know if she'd had any contact with people at the Russian embassy.
Together with him, we went through all my business cards, and then he found the card of Boris.
The business card that interested MI5 most belonged to a man working at the Russian embassy in Kensington. MI5 were concerned about this individual as they suspected he was one of the many spies working undercover at the embassy. He was referred to in court as Boris.
My understanding is that she was picked up by MI5 not because there was any smoking gun evidence against her, not because she was found carrying documents, secret documents out of Parliament, or had a memory stick about her person, but because she was making contact with a Russian intelligence officer in the Russian embassy in Kensington, in whom MI5 were already taking an interest.
Katya had originally met Boris from the embassy at a conference in London. He subsequently struck up a conversation with her at a nearby underground station. Do you think he was targeting you?
I am questioning it now. I think maybe.
Katya says that she told Mike Hancock about her encounter with Boris, and he told her not to have anything to do with him.
There are lots of Russians in London, some of them desirable and some of them very undesirable. And she had to make her own judgments on lots of people, but this was a specific operative working inside the Russian community in the embassy. And I felt that would be completely inappropriate for her to meet them.
Although the Cold War ended over 20 years ago, relations between Russia and the UK are still characterized by mutual suspicion. MI5 says that the number of Russian intelligence officers in London is up to Cold War levels. The most dramatic recent evidence of Russian activity in London was the murder by poisoning of Alexander Litvinenko.
Every day you could see he became worse. Every day it was fight for life.
He'd been an outspoken critic of the then President Putin. In Moscow, the former Russian intelligence officer suspected of the killing, Andrei Lugovoy, is now a Putin-supporting politician, elected to Russia's parliament.
Я официально продолжаю оставаться в розыске, не только для Скотланд-Ярда, но как бы для британской правоохранительной системы. Я нахожусь в розыске Интерпола, Wanted, соответственно. Но каких-то таких действий для того, чтобы узнать что-то дополнительное по этому делу, к сожалению, не предпринимаю.
Following Litvinenko's killing, he believes that Katya is simply a pawn in the wider game between British and Russian intelligence.
Мне кажется, происходит некая такая, не знаю, может быть, демонстрация для других, как бы, будущих задержанных сотрудников спецслужб, что вот можно как бы без суда человека в течение 10 месяцев держать в подвешенном состоянии и не высылать его, и не оставлять, ограничивать ее отношения, ее взаимоотношения, ее общение с близкими, я так понимаю, видимо, и с родственниками, и с друзьями.
The idea that at the end of the day, the Russia we're living with is in many ways not that different from the old Soviet Union, and all the problems we had with that old Soviet Union is very, very chilling. And frankly, if MI5 did not take this sort of thing seriously, we'd want our money back, and we'd be entitled to get our money back.
In 2010, Mike Hancock ended his relationship with Katya, and Katya moved out of his flat. She then met her next lover, a high-ranking German NATO official whom she met at another London conference. He was in his 50s. Did you know what he did?
Yes.
Did you talk about his work with NATO?
No.
Did you sleep with him?
Yes.
Were you a honey trap spy?
No. I'm sorry to disappoint you. It would have been a much more interesting story if I was.
In the summer of 2010, alarm bells from across the Atlantic rang in MI5 headquarters. The FBI had uncovered a sleeper cell of 10 Russians who'd been living all-American lives, unsuspected, in the United States. The most prominent Russian recruit to the cell was Anna Chapman, who'd once been married to a British citizen. On her return to Moscow, Chapman was greeted as a Russian hero, cashing in on her newfound fame with a series of photo shoots. She even went on to host her own TV show.
All I'm gonna say is I'm interested in helping other people. That's all.
That was a very disturbing case because it was clear the Russians were putting a great deal of money into developing long-term sleeper penetration agents at a young age who could be expected one way or another to grow into the fabric of American political culture.
But Katya was different. She was living quite openly under her own name and was known to the intelligence services. She says that she cooperated with them fully. In August 2010, Katya was returning home from a holiday in Croatia with a group of female friends. It was her birthday and they'd been away to celebrate.
It was midnight. They were waiting for me there to arrive. They knew that I would arrive.
Katya was taken away and interviewed by 2 MI5 officers.
They showed me a picture of my then boyfriend, which made me laugh because I couldn't understand why they would be interested in my relationships.
Katya's boyfriend at the time was the senior German official who worked for NATO. What was the tone of the interviews?
It started neutral, but very quickly it went into aggressive. You're sitting in the middle of the night, you don't know where you were brought by the car. There were people screaming at you, you have no idea what's going on.
How were you feeling?
I can't even describe, petrified.
Katya says that the screaming was done by a man, whereas in subsequent interviews conducted in a series of upmarket London hotels, a woman adopted a very different approach.
She tried to be friendly, talking about herself a lot, her son, for example, the books she read.
Did you realise what she was trying to do, the way she was operating?
Yes, but I didn't mind that. I'd rather have that than somebody screaming at me that I'm a liar.
MI5's interviews with Katya continued over a period of months towards the end of 2010.
The scariest part of this interrogation was that I've seen that these people were unprofessional and paranoid. Everything they've seen in Russian people was a spy. If you're Russian in this country, you're a spy. They could not understand how a Russian in London can speak English language. That was one of the questions they were querying. They believe that if you're Russian, the only way you can learn English language is in some kind of spy school.
Katya's former lover was also invited to meetings with MI5.
I invited them to come to my office in the Commons. They didn't want to do that. I said, well, I'll come to Ten's house and meet you at your headquarters. They didn't want to do that. They said, oh, we'd rather meet you in a hotel. So they had this rather bizarre arrangement where I go to a hotel, I find them in a room, and then I go into the room and they lock the door. Well, I didn't like some of the questions they asked because they were of a personal nature, but I had nothing to hide. So I answered them all truthfully. What I found strange was each time I tried to probe, what is this about? What is the allegation? They wouldn't say, they didn't say, and I think it was because they didn't know what to say. And I think that was rather pathetic.
Katya discovered that she would be invited to meet at one hotel and then be asked to go to another, slightly less grand. The Savoy became the Strand Palace.
Although Katya wasn't to know it, this was to be her final interview with the security service. It appears that by this stage, MI5's investigation was almost complete.
I had a knock on my door, 7 in the morning. I opened my door, there were 5 people standing outside my door with a light in my face. They came in, they asked for my passport. They didn't even look at it, they put it in their pocket and said that I have to dress and pack up and we're leaving and I will be leaving this country shortly.
At the beginning of December last year, Katya was served with deportation papers on the grounds that her presence in the United Kingdom was considered a threat to national security.
A Russian woman working for a senior Liberal Democrat MP is arrested on suspicion of espionage. MI5 raised concerns about the 25-year-old graduate. She now faces deportation.
Katya was determined to fight her case and decided to appeal. She had to do so through the Special Immigration Appeals Commission. On the face of things, MI5's case looked strong.
MI5 thought you were a spy. You didn't make it up.
I can't imagine anybody would believe, based on their case, that I was a spy.
I think they probably believed it, given the knowledge of how the Russian intelligence services work. And you seem to be the perfect case, the perfect profile, given your relationship with a series of powerful political and security and diplomatic figures, including an MP.
I don't know what they know about the Russian intelligence. I don't know much about Russian intelligence. I've learned quite a lot during this process, but still my knowledge is very limited.
Nick Fielding was chosen as an expert witness by Katya's legal team.
Isn't it perhaps a little more than coincidence that amongst her lovers were a Dutch diplomat, a NATO official, and a British Member of Parliament?
That is not the extent of her relationships, according to the evidence presented to court, and there were other people who were not involved in these kind of areas of work and who had very, very mundane occupations and don't fit that pattern at all.
But you still had sexual relationships with a Dutch diplomat, a NATO official and a British MP.
That's absolutely true. On the other hand, she was somebody who's a student of foreign relations. That was her degree and her postgraduate degree, and she was mixing in precisely those circles.
Katja and her legal team took a momentous decision in a desperate bid to convince the 3 judges, one of whom was a former Director General of MI5. This involved revealing the contents of her highly personal diaries.
When you decided to appeal against your deportation, did you realise that it would entail revealing much of the intimate details of your private life in public?
Yes.
And you were prepared to do that?
I had to weigh the 2 options I had. One is that I will be forever branded a spy, but will be able to keep my private life private, or I had to give all of this out into press and into the public, but be able to prove that I'm not a spy. And for me, more important was to prove that I'm not a spy.
The only way we could try to win this case was by really giving the court an avalanche of evidence about Katja's life, about her relationships, about what she's done over the past 10 years, to show and to try to prove a negative, which is that she is not and never was a Russian spy.
I was crying in my lawyer's office, was absolutely prepared to be humiliated by the press, by everybody around me, yes.
The appeal hearing lasted for 9 days. Having decided to reveal her personal thoughts in her diaries, Katja was taken aback when their authenticity was questioned.
But if you had been a spy, it's reasonable to think that you would have written the diary as part of your cover.
It would be incredible, would be very skillful.
But spies, Russian spies, are very skillful.
I've never met any, I don't know.
Katja's diaries became crucial evidence. When the judge declared them to be genuine, MI5's case started to unravel. In closing arguments, Katja's lawyers said that the MI5 investigation was more akin to Inspector Clouseau than George Smiley.
The senior case officer in this case had only been with the counterintelligence department since the spring of 2010. She didn't speak Russian. She wasn't sure how many people in her team even spoke Russian. She told the court that she had received effectively on-the-job training in counterintelligence. All these things point to somebody who doesn't have a huge background and a great deal of knowledge about the way in which the Russian intelligence services operate. And I think that is a little bit disturbing to me.
How do you regard the way in which MI5 have handled your case, or brought your case?
Extremely unprofessional. I was absolutely shocked. I can understand that they would have suspicion about me as a Russian working in parliament, about my relationships as well. But suspicions is not everything. You have to find evidence.
Security Services case was found to be wanting at every stage. The last year has been a Kafkaesque nightmare.
Although the court vindicated Katja, the judgment criticised her character. It described her as immature, calculating, emotional and self-centred. But her supporters have hit back.
I'm absolutely delighted but disgusted about the time it's taken and the way the security services have acted, as well as the way in which senior politicians within the Home Office has acted on this issue.
They had a pig-headed adherence to their belief, and reasonable suspicion isn't enough. And once that reasonable suspicion is met with evidence which suggests very strongly that she is not and never was a Russian spy, they should have reconsidered their case.
The more that MI5 is demoralised, the more it's laughed at, the more it's seen as unnecessary in today's world, the greater the chance for those who would do us harm or simply want to know sensitive things about us to get their way.
Although there will be disappointment at the Home Office that it has lost a high-profile case, the mood at MI5 headquarters is likely to be more sanguine. They feared that Katya was a long-term Russian spy, and though they couldn't prove it, she has now been burned and rendered inoperative. To MI5, despite the inevitable embarrassment, it's job done.
It was an extremely unfair process. I think if I can describe it in war terms, it would be me on a horse with a sword against tanks and aircrafts. So not for a second, actually, I thought that there was a possibility that I could win.
Spying is a world of assessments and suspicions. The court accepted it could have been hoodwinked by a supremely competent spy, but thought it unlikely. Katya has given her answer. And on Panorama next Monday, secret shopping. Do supermarket price wars really save you money?
It's not best value.
We investigate whether so-called deals really cost you more.
If you thought it was cold here during the winter, then how about minus?
Well, I hope you liked this story, and it was a true story. It happened just not more than 3 years ago. Now, why is this story important in the context of our discussions of information fraud? Well, I'm going to give you a little bit of a clue, but I cannot tell you what exactly it is, because your judgment is very important. Now, we are talking about information fraud in the context of a lot of the social engineering skills to con people to get information. Now, this story is a very famous story because the lady they captured was named at that time by this British intelligence agency called MI5. Okay, and consider this person is a very dangerous person. And the reason is they consider this lady is directly a spy sent from Russia, which is under the control of who and who, you know. And they consider the movement of this lady, particular relationships of this lady with several key persons, considered as her boyfriend, as something that's give a lot of clue that she's actually working as a spy, collecting intelligence, and she might do harm to the nation of Britain. And so the stories went because of the reporter's report. Now, consider this. If this lady is really someone who's very good at doing this kind of social engineering skill, fishing for relationships, in order to obtain some secret information from this country, from the other country, Britain, Germany, and even NATO, how does she do that? Now, the story here tells you a lot of very interesting things. Now, the much interesting thing that happened is towards the end, what's going to happen to her. You can read the story again. She was supposed to be deported out of Britain by the MI5 agency officers, but she fought back, and the case was resolved in the court, and then the court ruled that she's not a spy. All right. So, in the context of this, we were trying to connect things together as persons who is going to interact with people all the day. How are you going to distinguish, okay, who is going to do what in what way that you have to exercise caution, okay? So information fraud, all right? So, oh yes, let me make sure that you got this point. In the following 3 weeks, you're going to do problem-based learning, and you're going to work in team, and you're going to work in class as well as outside the classroom. But for my purpose, as long as you continue to work in class, learn to do it, it should be good enough for you to develop your field. And as I always suggest to my students, make the best use of those stories, okay? These are very good stories for you to dig into, to learn the issue that we expect you to learn, all right? So, and in this video called From Russia's Beloved BBC Panorama, the reporter has done an excellent job in putting the pieces together. And when you look at the interview, okay, when you look at the interview, watch it and listen to the question posed by the reporter to the lady and other very important persons there. Try to join down the question and try to look at the question, number of questions presented by the reporter and a number of answers obtained, and try to look up the stories there, okay? And I'm sure the way to learn critical thinking is not to do memorization. The way to learn how to discover things, perspective for your own, for a specific topic like this, depends on method to look into the clues based on a story that interests you, and start from there to discover what you need to learn from that problem-based learning. Because each person in your team with different jobs to accomplish is going to pick up different pieces of learning from that. And that is the purpose of helping you through the following 3 weeks' time in class, and hopefully also the class time through the virtual Moodle environment. You can learn to do that, okay? So I believe today I've already accomplished my goal by showing you the Nigerian scam from Russia's beloved. But of course, if you have time, make sure you watch this story at home too. It's very popular today, okay? So that is a very good thing. And so when you come back on Thursday, besides reserving some time for your team-based storytelling through your digital story that you have won, I'm also going to get into the virus network security, okay? The virus network security. I cannot do it too technical because this is not supposed to be a technical class, but I try to make it as smooth as possible for you to get the main points, all right? So allow me to take attendance for today, and then we're going to end today's class with 6 more minutes for you to go to the next class. All right, so just take 1 minute. Angela is here, Horace is not here, Andy is here, Anna is here, Annie is here, Billy is here, Giles, yes, Timmy, yes, Wyson is not here, Sammy is here, Lancy is here, Sophie, yes, thank you, and then Edward is here. Thank you very much for coming back. Yes. Now, I highly encourage you to sign up in this week's public discussion forum. If your team had a story, digital story to share, okay? You can earn your in-class participation score. You can also earn the bonus score, okay? So just share your digital story 5 minutes. And if you have a need that you want to switch group, just send me an email, okay? I know you are in a difficult position, Nancy. All right, so that's it for today. CISG113 section 1 information security privacy. Hopefully 1 to 2 stories we saw today, and there's a lot for you to learn from them. Okay? All right, thank you very much. See you later.